Well, the new depth chart is out, and looky here. Pitt has a starting quarterback. Officially, formally, a starting quarterback has been named. Eli Holstein at the top of the depth chart on Pitt's new official two deep, ahead of Nate Yarnell. Last week it was Eli Holstein or Nate Yarnell. This week it is Eli Holstein and then Nate Yarnell. Not a big surprise, not a big separation, not exactly. I think we all, I should say, expected it. We talked about it after the game on Saturday. We talked about it on yesterday's Morning Pitt. We talked about the quarterback situation and just sort of some further thoughts from the game. Now it's official. Eli Holstein is number one on the depth chart. Let's talk about what that means. Panther-Lair avoiding some potential gamesmanship. What's going on here? Did he grow up all of a sudden? He's now naming his starting quarterback. He could have played that out for at least another week. But we'll talk about that, what it means for Holstein to be the number one quarterback, other two deep observations, and more thoughts from hearing from Panther-Lair yesterday as we dive in here on the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Tuesday here as we dive into the week. I mean, we got the week started with yesterday with the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt, but here we are, Tuesday. We're rolling through, and you might already see it. What do I have on? Oh, look at that little basketball playing rock right there. This is a sweet shirt, and you know where it's from. If I'm wearing a Pitt shirt on the Morning Pitt or on our live streams, you know what the deal is. It's Home Field. HomeFieldApparel.com is the best place to get some Pitt sports gear. If you are a Pitt fan and you like really nice t-shirts and sweatshirts and joggers and hats and jackets and koozies and all those different kinds of things, if you really like sweet Pitt gear, the best place to get it is at HomeFieldApparel.com. You can see this cool design. I mean, let's be honest. That's awesome, right? Like, that is a sweet design. Like, this isn't even like a Pitt, sort of font that you're really used to seeing. But it's excellent. You know, this isn't an image of rock that you're used to seeing, but it is excellent. And he's wearing the block Pitt, like the early 90s block Pitt on it, or not early 90s, like mid 2000s, like 2006 block Pitt on his jersey. Either way, it's excellent. I mean, it's instantly recognizable as Pitt. It's got a vintage feel, but it's also modernized with the font and the way it looks. It's perfect, and it's on the highest quality t-shirt. I mean, this thing is soft. It's comfortable. It's held its shape. It fits great. I can't say enough good things, and I'll keep saying it because you need to know. And if you're a Pitt fan, you need sweet Pitt gear. This is the place you need to go. It's HomeFieldApparel.com. For all your Pitt gear, and they have lots of schools actually. It's not just Pitt there. You can find shirts and sweatshirts and all those things for lots of schools all across the country, and it's all at HomeFieldApparel.com. So remember, use the promo code PIT24, PIT24, and you can get 15% off your first order at HomeFieldApparel.com. So go check it out, HomeFieldApparel.com. You will not be disappointed. Other housekeeping things we always ask you to do, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, to get all of your Pitt video content. You won't miss anything. Any of our Morning Pitt videos, our weekly live stream. We do it every Wednesday night at 8:30, plus our post-game shows, interviews, press conferences, all those things. You won't miss any of it as long as you like this video and you subscribe, more importantly, to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then lastly, of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. So yesterday was Monday. Panther-Lair press conference. We'll talk a little bit about what Narduzzi talked about at his weekly presser. But just as relevantly, they released the new depth chart. And I mean, I say relevantly, there's it's debatable how much relevance the depth chart really has. It doesn't always line up with what we see in person, but it exists. They hand it out, and a lot of times it is a reflection of what's going on or where the team might be or what's notable, or how the coaches are viewing them, or at least how they want us to believe publicly that they are viewing them when they pass out the depth chart on Monday. So some observations there. Like I said, the biggest one was right off the bat where your eyes went right from the start. First time you opened that PDF and looked at the depth chart, the first thing you looked at was the quarterback situation. And sure enough, Eli Holstein listed as the number one quarterback ahead of Nate Yarnell and Ty Diefenbach. Last week, as you well know, we talked about it all throughout the week. The was used, Eli Holstein or Nate Yarnell. It was kind of up in the air up until Thursday about who would actually start the Kent State game. We had some indication it might be Eli Holstein. Shout out to LWA4, the poster on the message boards. Posted it on like Wednesday that that Eli Holstein was going to be the starter. Pete Thamel reported it like 2 minutes before we sat down with talk with Pat Narduzzi on Thursday when he told us that Eli Holstein would be the starter. And then Narduzzi said it, so it all sort of became official. But we were still under the impression that it was a quarterback competition. And even if we thought Holstein was the favorite, it was still going to be a competition. And then, as we've said a couple times since Saturday, Holstein went out, completed 5 of 5 for 74 yards and a touchdown on the first drive of the game, and I think the competition ended right there. I mean, I think Holstein would have had to really go in the tank to lose the job after that. I really, after that first drive, I remember thinking to myself, like, they're not putting Nate Yarnell in here. Not anytime soon. Maybe in the fourth quarter, maybe if it's a blowout. But they're not putting him in anytime soon, and they didn't. He didn't play until the final 2 drives, and I think at that point it was pretty clear what the situation was. Even so, I wondered if Pat Narduzzi would still try to keep it under his hat for one more week. Try to go into the Cincinnati game saying, yeah, we really liked what Eli did, but we want to make sure Nate gets an opportunity. We want to see both of those guys out there. This would have been the strategic gamesmanship thing to do. Say we still want to see both of those guys out there. We really like what Eli did. We think Eli did a great job, but we also think Nate is a really good quarterback. And so we want to get an opportunity for both of those guys out there this weekend. Put them on the road, take them on the road, go in a hostile environment and see how they handle that, because it can be really different playing at home, playing on the road. This is what I would have said if I was Pat Narduzzi, knowing full well it's going to be Eli Holstein who starts the game, who finishes the game, and plays every snap in between, unless, God willing, another opportunity comes up to put in Nate Yarnell because you're ahead by 30 points in the fourth quarter. Don't think that's going to happen. The most recent betting line that I saw, I think, was Cincinnati minus 1.5 is what it was on Scores and Odds on Monday night. I think it opened at about 3 or 3.5. Cincinnati minus 3 or 3.5, dropped down to 2.5. And then I saw it at one point, Cincinnati minus 1. But then, like I said, when I looked last night, the most recent thing I saw was minus 1.5. Or, that means on a neutral field, right? Pitt would be favored by 2.5. It means that if you, I guess if the game was played at Acrisure Stadium, Pitt would be favored by 5.5. Is that what the bookkeepers are telling us? Is that what the bookmakers are saying, that Pitt is a 5.5 point favorite if this game is played at home? Over under, I think, was 59.5. Now, I told you last week I thought the under was the smart play in the Pitt-Kent State game. Pitt cleared the over by itself. They could have shut out Kent State and the over still would have hit, so maybe not. Actually, you should just not listen to me when it comes to betting advice. In general, you shouldn't listen to me when it comes to betting advice. And absolutely, when it's a Pitt game or something involving Pitt, you should definitely not listen to me when it comes to gambling advice. I have no idea. And it's unfortunate because this is where a lot of guys are making money these days. There's a lot of money to be made in gambling advice, even if you just pretend to know what you're talking about. But I'm not even going to pretend to know what I'm talking about. I still feel like the under on 59.5 is a good play. Kind of thinking maybe I would take Pitt plus 1.5, but I haven't decided about that yet. It doesn't matter. Quarterback situation, opportunity was probably there for Pat Narduzzi to engage a bit of gamesmanship. He decided not to. He decided to show his hand and say, this is who we're going with. This is the guy. And I think I can't think many people have an issue with it or would argue about Eli Holstein being the starting quarterback going forward. When you look at how he played, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 75% completion percentage, a couple of nice scrambles. I don't think anybody could really raise too much of an issue. I think the only issue I've seen, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I've seen it, and I think it's somewhat valid, is that Nate Yarnell never really got an opportunity. My only counter to that would be, I think he got his opportunity. I think he had an opportunity in the spring to pull away from Eli Holstein. I think he had an opportunity in August in training camp to pull away from Eli Holstein. I think he failed to do so. He kept the competition close, so when Holstein started coming on, there wasn't much Yarnell could do. Holstein moved ahead. And then, you get in the game, and did Nate Yarnell get a full opportunity in the game against Kent State to show whether this competition should continue or if he should get more looks ahead of Holstein? No. He didn't really get that opportunity. But he probably needed to create more separation in the spring and in training camp in order to have more of an opportunity. I think when he let Holstein close the gap and then ultimately pass him to get the start for the Kent State game, I think Yarnell very much put himself at the mercy of Holstein's play, and unfortunately for Nate Yarnell, Holstein played really well. Now you go on the road, see what kind of challenge that presents. It's going to be a different atmosphere, a higher level of competition. I think Cincinnati's defense, I don't know if they'll be great, but I think they'll be better than Kent State, and so you're going to have a new challenge. Hostile crowd, even if it's only 25,000 or whatever they hold at Nippert Stadium, it's going to be a challenge. And we'll see how Eli Holstein responds. Elsewhere on the depth chart, they moved Desmond Reed to the sole starter at running back. Last week it was Desmond Reed or Rodney Hammond. Hammond, of course, ineligible for the season. For reasons that have still not been made public, there's certainly a lot of speculation, and we'll leave it at that because I think it's irresponsible on our part to speculate in that way with some of the rumors that are out there. We've heard the same rumors you have. And if you haven't heard the rumors, go on Panther-Lair.com. You'll read them there. But like I say, I don't think it's appropriate for us to speculate on those rumors. I would just say that it's our understanding, and this is not a rumor, that it's not his ineligibility is not related to academics, and it's not related to legal trouble. Either way, the important point is that he's not playing. So he's off the depth chart. Desmond Reed is in as the number one running back with Derek Davis and then Daniel Carter behind him. Wide receiver, they also made some moves too. They had an or last week and had Dejon Reynolds. It was like Kenny Johnson or Dejon Reynolds at one starting spot with Dejon Reynolds as a backup at another spot. Sincere Lee not on the depth chart last week. I think his availability was in question. Due to injury, he ended up playing, according to Pro Football Focus, 38 snaps, which was the fourth most among the wide receivers. And really, there was kind of a separation. There was like Kanate Mumfield and Poppy Williams and Kenny Johnson and Sincere Lee. A big separation between Lee and Mumfield, but still, there was a really big drop-off from Lee to Dejon Reynolds. So Lee, according to Pro Football Focus, Lee played 38 snaps. Reynolds played 16. So you have kind of a cutoff there of a top four. And then the next guys being Reynolds, Lamar Seymour, and Tyreek Robinson. The freshman got out there for about 9 snaps. So shout out to him. This week's depth chart includes Sincere Lee, so now there are no ors. They've got starters listed as Kanate Mumfield backed up by Dejon Reynolds, Raphael Williams backed up by Lamar Seymour, Kenny Johnson backed up by Sincere Lee. And, I think you've got, I think we always assumed it would be Mumfield and Johnson would be two of the top guys. Went back and forth about who that third guy might be. Reynolds was my initial guess, but then Williams started getting a lot of positive pub, and there was a lot of hype talking about him coming out of training camp, so I wondered if he might be in that mix. He ended up being in that mix. He played the second most snaps among the wide receivers. And so I think that's your top three right now of Johnson, Reynolds, and Williams. Johnson, Mumfield, and Williams with Reynolds, Lee, and Seymour behind them, kind of in that order of those three backups. I think Seymour is going to be the third man on the totem pole, the sixth man, as it were. Lee will probably get the most snaps out of the backups, and then Reynolds will play as well. But the depth chart sort of more accurately reflects the situation. It'd be interesting to see if the depth chart accurately reflects the situation at left guard. Ryan Jacoby left the game with an injury. I had it written down when he left the game. There it is. It was the next to last drive of the game. No, it was Pitt's final drive of the game, actually. It was the first play of Pitt's final drive of the game, because Nate Arnell was in at quarterback. And they still had Jacoby in there. I don't know why, because they had their backup offensive line out there, or they went to it at some point during that drive, where they had like Ty Ray playing and Terrence Enos were the tackles. Ryan Coretta was out there at right guard. Terrence Moore was playing at center, and I guess Jacoby was out there at left guard, got hurt on the first play. A Nate Arnell scramble, and Jason Carter came in and replaced him for the rest of that drive, ultimately, finishing the game. It didn't look good. I mean, Jacoby was slow coming off the field. A bit of a concern there. He obviously had an injury that cost him all of last season. I can't sit here and say if it's the same leg or the same knee or the same injury or anything like that, but he was coming off pretty gingerly. So I think interior offensive line is going to be important this week. I think Cincinnati was really good at defensive tackle last year. They've taken a bit of a step back this year, but you're going to need good protection there. I mean, I think Branson Taylor and Ryan Barrett have to take a step forward. They need a big boost of that week 1 to week 2 improvement. But you need those interior guys playing well. I thought Lyndon Cooper was pretty solid. I thought B.J. Williams was solid. I thought Jacoby played well. It's only week 2. You don't need to be diving into the depth already. So hopefully Ryan Jacoby's healthy and available to play, and you're not going to miss him for too long. If he has to miss this week, hopefully that absence doesn't go too far into the season, because it'd be disappointing for him to miss all of last year and come back for basically one game, and then he's back on the bench. That would be unfortunate. Flipping over to the other side, still no real word on Francis Brew and Sean Fitzsimmons, when those guys will be available. Fitzsimmons not even listed on the depth chart last week or this week. Francis Brew listed on the depth chart last week and this week as an or starter, one of 3 at a defensive tackle spot. One of the defensive tackle positions has Nick James or Isaiah Neal. The other one has Nikai Johnson or Francis Brew or Anthony Johnson. The starters last week, and that's how they were listed last week. The starters last week ended up being Nick James and Isaiah Neal. So this is the beauty of the depth chart. If you look at it, one of the defensive tackle positions is Nick James or Isaiah Neal as the starters. Those two ended up being the starters. It wasn't one of those guys. It was both of them. But Francis Brew listed in there as an or co-starter at defensive tackle. Didn't play last week. Didn't even dress due to injury. Who knows if he's going to be back? I mean, it's unknown. They left him on the depth chart, which seems optimistic. You know what I mean? Seems a little bit encouraging. At the same time, they still haven't put Sean Fitzsimmons on the depth chart. Fitzsimmons got hurt during training camp, was not available for the season opener, and the fact that he's not listed on the depth chart this week doesn't give you a lot of hope for him being available in this week's game either. And so, as much... I think there were some encouraging signs out of the defensive line this past week in the Kent State game, but they need all hands on deck. They need everyone available that they can possibly get, because they're going to need better play and more effective play out of the front 4 going forward. And so it's better to have Francis Brew and Sean Fitzsimmons available than not, right? I mean, is Francis Brew going to change the outcome of a game? Probably not. Is Sean Fitzsimmons? Maybe, but probably not. But it's better to have them out on the field than to not have them out on the field. It's better to have those options available to you than not. And I think, who knows how long it's going to be for Fitzsimmons. You hope it'll be a little bit quicker for Brew, but we just have to wait and see. I think it's encouraging that they kept Francis Brew on the depth chart. It doesn't guarantee that he's going to play or anything like that, but I think if he was definitely out, they probably would have taken him off the 2 deep. And at the same time, it's not encouraging that Fitzsimmons is not on the depth chart. So we'll see what happens there. No other changes throughout the defense. Still the same guys, Jimmy Scott, and Nate Matlack listed as the starters at DN, Kyle Lewis, Brandon George as the star and middle linebacker starters, respectively. Money linebacker Braylon Lovelace or Rasheem Biles is how it's listed. Lovelace got the start in the Kent State game, but they both played and both played quite a bit. Let me just bring up the snap counts real quick. There's about a 10, 11 snap difference, according to Pro Football Focus, between Lovelace and Biles. So not an even split, and it favored Lovelace, who got the start, but they both played a lot. They were both out there quite a bit. I don't know. I want to say Biles didn't really get time in the Delta defensive package. I would have to look this up and look a little bit closer. No, I guess he did. On the series where he played in the base defense, he stayed out there for the Delta. Yeah, so it wasn't even like that. I mean, I think they had some guys they pulled on or put out on the field when they went to the Delta defense, but Biles wasn't one of them. If he was out there for the base defense for the to start the drive, then he stayed out there for the Delta. They didn't really sub him that I could see in quick glance over my notes. So we'll see what happens there. Moving back through the defense, you've still got Rylan Ganey, Rashad Battle listed as the starters at corner, which is what happened in the game. Javon McIntyre or P.J. O'Brien at free safety in the game. Obviously, those two ended up starting. Donovan McMillan came off the bench. Interesting decision there, but McMillan ended up still playing a ton. I want to say, he played less than McIntyre, actually. McIntyre played more than McMillan, and they both played more than P.J. O'Brien. Cruz Brookins was only a few snaps behind O'Brien. So we'll have a lot of these snap counts and things like that on Panther-Lair.com so you can see it. It's a little bit easier to visualize sometimes than to try and imagine it in your head as I'm talking about it. But either way, I think some of these decisions are based on what happens during the week. As far as who gets to start at defensive tackle, who gets to start at cornerback or safety or outside linebacker, knowing full well that at all of those positions, they're going to rotate a decent amount. So it's really like you're going to start, you might end up playing 10 snaps more, but everybody's going to play. But if you practice the best, you're going to be the guy who takes the field first. And I think that's what they did this. I bumped the mute button. Sorry about that. I think that's what they did this past week, and I think it's what they'll do again this week. So the starting lineup might be exactly the same. There might be a few changes, but I think the snap counts will look pretty similar to what they were in the Kent State game. All right, got a lot to talk about this week as it relates to the defense, the offense, everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. So make sure you don't miss any of our Morning Pitt videos this week. Like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you don't miss any of those. And of course, we have our live stream tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have our post-game show that will be live after the Cincinnati game. It might be later in the day. It's a noon game, but I think we'll probably do the post-game show kind of like we did this past week at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I kind of like doing it in the evening a little bit more rather than just diving into it right after the game. If you guys have thoughts on that, let me know. But that's what I prefer. That's what we're going to do this week. We'll see how it goes, how it compares to, last week where we waited a little bit. And maybe we'll do one in the future, like a road game. We'll go live right after the game and see how it compares if we get a better crowd or whatever. Because that's what it's all about. We want the most people at one time. That's what makes it fun, is having you guys all join in. So like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the Pitt sports coverage. And then, of course, don't forget to go to homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code PIT24 to get 15% off your first order. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great Tuesday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.